Very good afternoon. Thank you for taking this time out for this exchange of thought and deliberation together. On behalf of FICCI and IBA, I want to thank all the fellow dignitaries who are here, our industry leaders, media personals, committee members, our technology partners, and my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are going to talk about one very important subject that is touching our industry very closely, and especially post-COVID, this has become much more pertinent, not only for our FI industry, but also for many other industries who actually are on the line of growth, enabling via digital. And that is cyber and infosec. Let's have a glimpse of it before I open it up to my esteemed panelists to share their views. On cyber, there has been a major movement in the last 2.5 years, which world and especially our country hasn't witnessed. And if you will see, the whole cyber crime, it has risen from $445 billion to about $2 trillion economy. And largely because, as you know, that COVID has fueled up the digital growth, and especially few of our policies that have encouraged the whole digital inclusion. Hence, this particular topic has come to much stronger light for our country than many others. Because of this, there has also been events. So today, if we have to bring the focus of our industry and government and regulation, it's not because we are assuming. There are certain facts that have started emerging, and there has been certain events which has costed either country or the industry approximately some $50 billion in economy because of certain of the cyber crimes. And they are across the industry. In fact, one of the surprises, and just to give a reflection, that we may be thinking that our FI industry would be having lots of PII payments, very critical data set. Therefore, the other industries may not be impacted much, but that's not the case. We are seeing lots of threats in industrial goods and manufacturing sector as well. And therefore, the focus for this topic has started becoming much more relevant, not just for us, but for many others, which means that as an industry leader, as an industry body together, that this particular topic has started taking seat at the table. All of us today, if you will see, with the advent of various of IoT devices, whether it is Nest, Alexa, Apple Watches, smart homes, and we are not untouched by those products. We also have seen that when you go to a small vendor shop and pay via certain of the payment aggregator, it says that payment done via a small box. So the whole machine and software have started coming in, which means that the data is exposed on the internet for a longer while, and handshaking between various different dimensions and not just software. Therefore, the complexities have increased. And with this increased complexities, it will be very interesting to know that 57% of our IoT devices are vulnerable to medium or high severity attacks. And approximately 98% devices have gone unencrypted, and rightfully so, because this is emerging technology and nobody knew that from where the loopholes can come. Therefore, this brings one very important attention, that if you will see global data, we actually are sitting at very exposed data in transit when such handshakes are happening. And this is a research done by certain agency wherein over 220K IoT devices across internet, when you search via important search engines of the world, you actually can see lots of data exposed. And these are not small names to reckon. Few of them are also somebody who serve our industry. So think about it, if not directly, indirectly also we are exposed. One of the most important thing is that who all are behind this. And interestingly, it is not just outsiders. Several times it is also some of our ignorance of the subject, some of the boutique and niche innovation inventions happening, and therefore we may not foresee and forecast. Hence, few of the actors are us who actually are giving birth to such gaps, but it's important to keep the innovation on. But the larger risk also is from the outside actors who we pretty much know as, either black hats, gray hats. Few tell them activists on online, and few are, not surprisingly, also certain of the cyber think tank of countries. And unfortunately, few of them are who are trying to kind of show their might, but may not be very relevant actors in this whole consortium. So if you see, there are many, it is not just one. And because of that, one of the things that when we were researching, I want to urge to the industry that it is no more a play of just process or procedure or having few of the tools. Rather, we need to be proactive, and proactive not just by people, process and various of the procedures, but also via technology. Question for us, and few of the countries have shown it, that how can we be preemptive and proactive rather than reactive? Today, it will not be unfair to say, as many of the leaders sitting in the room, and we'll hear it from our STEAM panel shortly, that will it be fair to say that we are reactive to these threats? And if we have to be proactive, how few new technologies we can acknowledge, imbibe, administer in our organization or regulatory or academia or government, wherein AI, MLP, various of crypto methodologies, which is around the encryption, decryption, tokenizations, and various of SOC centers which do not let us know when event has happened. How to achieve this is one of the questions for all of us in the room. Reflecting on this, there is also certain of the countries who have shown exemplary strength in putting capability at a country level, that if any threat either within the country or across the countries are emerging, then what is the framework that they apply? And one of the most important countries who have done it to a certain degree of strength is Israel. And when we take that learning from them, as well as many others who have done it right, there is also one deliberation for all of us in the room, that at a country level, if we have to envision a framework, how we can envision it wherein industry and regulation and government can come in together, wherein we all handshake in terms of how to safeguard our data, how to have a right SOC center, not just to keep a panopticon check, but also to handshake and therefore preempt early in cycle if any such threats are coming. How can we have a scorecard wherein we see very clearly that what kind of a threat comes to the country, and therefore how we can let industry know that in couple of months, if we do not take proactive actions, we are up for grabs. So this is one of the deliberation at a country level that I want to leave the room to think and deliberate together. But on that note, I also want to welcome the esteemed panelists who come from varied industry and therefore bring lots of experience, a wealth of experience. If I aggregate it, easily will run over 200 years collectively between these gentlemen. And we will hear the reflections from Sankarson Banerjee, the CIO, RBL Bank, Mr. Lalit Kumar, Head of Security, AWS Amazon, Mr. Vipin Sardia, Chief Risk Officer, India and South Asia Visa, Mr. Sameer Ratolikar, CISO, HDFC Bank, and Mr. Rajiv Mishra, CGM, DIT, Union Bank of India. So let's put our hands together and I'll open it up for my fellow friends and panelists to exchange some thought together. So seems the house is waiting to have certain responses and reflection. And I am very sure that with this context, there's lots with the wealth of experience that you guys bring in can share. So if I may start, Shanky, with you. And there is one very important deliberation that many of us have been deliberating, that post-COVID, and because of this whole explosion of digital growth in our country, contextually, how do you see importance of cyber in industry today as compared to what it was 3 years back?
So, there's no debate that the footprint has enormously enhanced in the COVID times. Most banks, their businesses in the digital side have gone up quite dramatically, sometimes 20, 30 times. And obviously that has added to the ability of fraudsters to intercept or defraud or remotely, engineer scams. What we have seen is a huge expansion in social engineering fraud, in India in particular. India actually, we, in conjunction with the regulator, in conjunction with NPCI, have actually been aware of cyber fraud for a while. It did not catch us unawares in the pandemic. Unlike many other countries, we have indeed been developing cyber crime prevention capabilities for a while. And it has matured to a point. In fact, one of the reasons for our high incidence of social engineering is because there are quite a few routine hacking controls. It's therefore much easier to socially engineer the end user than to try and hack through our networks and hack through the stops and procedures that most banks have put in place. Not that it cannot be done, it's just easier to socially engineer. The Jamtaras of the world exist because it's easier to fool customers than hack banks. And this is a trend we will see continuing. Unfortunately, the stronger we grow, the more the social engineering or other avenues that bypass us rather grow. And we have to therefore keep learning. As soon as somebody tries to bypass us, we have to now start focusing on that particular segment of engineering. And there 2 or 3 extra things are required. We need substantial help from the cyber crime enforcement in India, which is still maturing. Today also, though it is much better than it was, it's not very easy to report a social engineering hack as a crime. The demands of that the cybercrime cell requires is typically still targeted towards hacking attacks and not towards social engineering. And therefore it is very hard to catch the social engineering perpetrators. And that is one thing we will require. We will never be able to fully defend ourselves. We'll also have to catch the people who commit the crime. And so that's one area where I think we will need help. We will also need better industry cooperation. So far we've been individual actors, and that's how normal evolution always happens. You always first, live in a gated community and protect yourself. Eventually you learn that a police force protecting the city and the country is an imperative that progresses. So that's where we are. Today we are in gated communities. We protect ourselves to a certain degree, to reasonably well. Now we need to get together in communities and protect the community as a whole, and then eventually get together on a much larger scale as an industry and so on.
So social engineering, and yes, this is a very pertinent topic, especially when the social is on a rampant growth in multiple form and fashion. With that, if I may come to Lalit, and Lalit, you have been running one of the most important cloud infrastructures in the country and the world. And you may also have lots of opportunity to go and see across industries. How pertinent and relevant that you see today the cyber and risk topic has become, bringing technology in play as what it used to be about 3 to 4 years back?
Thanks. So first of all, we all share we have a shared digital future. So it's no longer a lonely battle. We all are party to it. It's everyone's responsibility. Now, I just add some more context to it before answering this. We had physical security, then we had information security. That means we are protecting against any unauthorized information access. Now let's add privacy layer on top of it. Unauthorized access of personal data. That's the stage we are in currently. And when we look at, if we take a step back and look at the behind the scene, what has been happening, the application design, they all are, any application which have been operating at a scale, they all are now expressed in code. Be it infrastructure deployment, application deployment, AppSec review, compliance, audit, everything is expressed in code. Anything which is an anomaly, be it network anomaly, be it fraud, or be it unexpected behavior or change, these are all the things which are being expressed in logs. And now to analyze the logs, what we have is a different mechanism. There's no single data model. There is no single format in the industry that we have all agreed on. So one of the key change which I'm seeing is, and where everyone is coming together, is open cybersecurity format, where every industry leaders like IBM, Splunk, Amazon, everyone is collaborating and creating one single model where all these data, all these logs could be expressed, and we can extract threat intelligence out of that data. So yes, so this is one of the key change which we are seeing, rather than just fighting individually with disparate system. Rather, we all come together and solve these problems.
And this is very interesting. Open cyber security format, or various of the open source, or various of the ways in which industry is collaborating for the data and PII protection. That's very insightful. And with that, if I may do a little bit of segue, and Rajiv, if I may ask you that with changing times, and our industry also has evolved, but this subject of cyber is still very niche. And why it is niche is largely because, the people who can actually turn the magic around, which is the skills, between academia, training houses, between industry, that's so thin. What's your view on this? Is it really thin? Is there something that we need to do about it? Or no, it's an assumption and we just need to leverage. How do you see that in the country?
Cyber security is a niche area, but all of us always speak about it. Like we all speak in the physical world, chori ho jayegi, loot is there or something is there. Similarly, cyber security, we all think should be there. Now, if I put a question to this house, how many of us download any app and the terms and conditions, we just stick it up without knowing what are there in the terms and conditions? I think all of us will say yes and go ahead. Isn't it so? Now, that is the level of cyber, that privacy which we are talking. We are all talking about data being shared or not shared. We are giving a mute consent to all the things which are there being asked for. And then we say cyber security has to be there. Now, cyber security, what I understand, is strongest to the weak, as compared to the weakest link which is there in that entire network. Now, with the Jam Trinity coming up, we all talked about COVID, a lot of increase in the transactions, digital world transactions have happened. We are seeing the UPIs, which is now taking a lot of transactions, about 60-70% of the entire banking transaction is being routed through the UPI channels. Small ticket size or big ticket size, it hardly differs. But what type of customers are handling it, and what are their understanding about this cyber security? That is where it comes. Now, as institutions, in your presentation, Saurabh, you said we need to collaborate in the world total as a country as a whole, not as an institution. And my friend Sanky mentioned that we are right now in the gated society. Yes, banks, we say I am making my securities Pakka, my CISO says everything is confirmed, there cannot be any breach. But the business vertical says, no, I want this to be running fast. Now there is a tradeway. They say, I don't understand your cyber security part, but my thing is I want this application to be running faster, this access to be provided to everyone, and CISO says, no, bhai, mera to gated community hai. I am within this gate, I will not allow outside traffic to come in. How do we function? So that is a tradeway which we are looking at. Lot of things have to be taken up, learnings have to be passed on, teachings have to be passed on, education to the society, education to the people who handle it has to be there. At Union Bank, we have set up a cyber security of excellence where we do a lot of in-house researches, what is happening. Other institutions also have to come up doing researches. We have to join hands. Time has come when the entire society joins together and then build up the open framework which was developed. This all has to be developed at the country level, and we see that, yes, there are ways we handle the people who are coming out, because today what we are seeing is in the digital footprint is going to increase exponentially tomorrow. So we have to be ready first, and proactive, reactive things are to be there. Instead of saying that my SOC is very active, but it's all after the instance, post-mortem. We are doing analyzing the log and making ourselves ready. Can we be more reactive? Can we look into the future and predict using the AI tools which are being able to us, and look into the future and protect our systems, protect the people who are users to the system. So that is where the things will come. So though it's a niche, which we say it's a niche area, but it's not a niche area. It has to be a concern of each one of the individuals, because each one of us are connected digitally somewhere or the other. We need to have stronger laws, stronger enforcement bodies to be put in place. At the same time, we have to be responsible citizens who are participating in this this entire digital framework.
So certainly, I think it's so clear that though in our country we may not call it a niche, and that's one of the very powerful statements to make in this room, but seems that is how industry is thinking. It is not, but it's complex. And how we reduce that complexity is one of very critical tasks for all the leaders in the room. But since we talked about there is a growth, there is a digitization, there is an exponential digital inclusion that has come, and there is lots of focus on this subject, as Lalit said, across industry with open security formats, etc. coming in. The question of talent still is very pertinent. We are as good as the talent in the country, and therefore to bring a little bit of more flavor to the similar dimension, and Vipin, if I may ask you, Visa arguably is one of the strongest company on earth, wherein there is lots of focus on risk and cyber, very diligent way of doing risk and cyber. How do you see from your lenses the talent density? How can it be increased for the country? What 2 or 3 such dimensions, seeing the entity you are with, if at a country level we can actually up the index of the talent density?
So no simple answer, no magic bullets around how we can do it, because technology keeps evolving. First and foremost, all of you spoke about the challenges that were there during the COVID time and how it impacted all of us. And to all the people inside this room and outside as well, we as a nation did a phenomenal job. Just imagine a scenario when a lockdown was announced and we all had questions in our mind how we are going to do things, and all of you quickly pivoted so that pull together your teams, pull together your people to make sure there is no disruption in the payments ecosystem. And if we need a bigger example of talent being able to pull together such a thing, it's an amazing job all of us did. I would also like to mention that technology has been a great enabler in the way we have used technology, has solved some of our problems in enhancing our capabilities. And while this whole man versus machine debate continues raging. I will call out 3-4 areas where as people we have really picked up technology to manage the customer life cycles cutting across industries. And he spoke about cyber not being just impacting FI but the larger ecosystem, and we play a very crucial part as an FI community because we touch every industry. So first thing is all of us did a phenomenal job, our people did a phenomenal job in very quickly pivoting that it's just not static rules which are going to help. It's a risk-based approach that we need to take, and there were teams which were trained to do that job. There were tools that was brought in. I can go on speaking about things like risk-based authentication frameworks that Visa deploys globally, or the current protocol on the EMV 3DS that has been rolled out. That's one example that comes to my mind. The other thing is, today we don't live in an isolated world. So when we talk about talents, we are not just looking at what happens inside. We are looking at capabilities of partners. We are looking at capabilities of merchants and how they can be collectively leveraged. And every one of us on the panel spoke about collaboration. And I think collaboration is the key to increasing the talent density, which you spoke about. Third thing, and that's where the collaboration, what's happening in other geographies, etc., also help us create solutions, and people came up with great idea, and thanks to the regulator who mandated our tokenization implementation. So what I'm speaking about is how we can leverage the knowledge we have in devaluing certain things. Today the criminals romanticize about the compromised credentials that are available, but we quickly pivoted. Take the example of RBI or take the example of UIDI, which has a very high grade degree of virtualization. All this has helped, but you can't take away the fact that you require experts like Chanki, Lalit, Rajiv to be there with their deep cross-disciplinary skills across forensic investigation, cyber security, data and technology, and years of experience. So that one community which will continue to grow, and we'll need them in spite of all technology. The other community which is going to be what we call our frontline cyber warriors, because frauds we have seen have global rings, and they can occur at any point of time, when least expected. So the man versus machine debate will continue. You will have views on investing more in technology, taking away man, but I think it's more of a collaboration which is going to enhance and create the trust we as a community provides to the payments ecosystem.
I have a small contradictory opinion here. You know, we keep saying we have a skills issue. We actually think of, in the pandemic when we scaled up, all the banks scaled up from, tens of people working out of home to tens of thousands of people working out of home within weeks. It did not happen without skills. We obviously, had people who knew how to do it. It's not that it failed wholesale. In fact, the smallest bank to the largest bank, PSU bank, private sector bank, all of them scaled up. So, I think we are worried about the skills issue, of course, but I think the skills issue is not as acute as we like to say it is. Where we have a challenge is we are fighting the whole world for skills. The same TCS that implements for us also implements for every bank in the world. And there, of course, they get paid more. There is larger projects. So that's the fight we have. We have Indian skills. Luckily, India is a service center of the world, which means we have skills in every kind of thing imaginable. But the demand that comes from the whole world sometimes exceeds our ability to extract our own internal demand. At the same time, the other challenge we have on skills is we do have a need to reskill the lower level people on day-to-day activities. It is the high-level skills that actually we find easier to get. I mean, it is the day-to-day. Somebody who administers a firewall, we find today harder, few experienced people managing firewalls. So we get junior guys who make mistakes. That is the bigger challenge. Our workforce is increasingly becoming more junior because the senior guys are doing global projects. And that's a challenge I at least personally have faced in multiple companies where we are forced to hire juniors and train them ourselves as opposed to hiring experienced people because the experienced people get dollar salaries. I think that is a bigger issue for us, to increase the underlying base demand. So we'll work with colleges to get some of these skills taught at the colleges. We are working, for instance, to have our own internal academies teaching the basic skills of that we need. Luckily, of course, technology is also making things less people dependent. But I think that is the bigger challenge for us, more than the absolute availability of skills.
Very pertinent. I think two very important takeaways coming from both Vipin and Shanky. One, the community. Are we leveraging our community? Are we leveraging the country think tank? The second is now the inclusion at the grassroots level for this topic, either via academia or via various of social ways of educating. So with this, now I can certainly say that talent war, or to retain the best of the talent, or to incubate the talent, is one such work that as leaders we all will have to continue doing. But coming to Lalit, and this you can throw some light, as Amazon being one of the most innovative companies on earth, and share that particular pedigree with few others. But the more the digitization, the more the technology, the more the sophistication to cyber tech. What top 3 innovative and emerging trends that you see from your lenses in this domain that is going to take a center seat down the times to come?
Yeah, thanks. First, I would like to make an observation. We often talk about Jamtara and all. We give those examples. But then there is also a great community in India we have for bug bounty. By the way, Indians dominate in bug bounty programs. So if you look at skills, probably we need to think about how we incubate skills more. Now coming to the question on
I must say, Jamtara is an example of bottom level skill. These guys were significantly skilled at figuring out security flaws.
Yeah, that's also a skill, like putting in the right direction there. Yeah, thanks. Now coming to the question that more digitization, our life, if we look at our life itself, from 20 years to now, probably all our life is in a phone and all smart apps and communication. Our life has been digitized. There's more and more risk. I'll just start from a human example and come to technology. When we present any kind of identity, we probably have driving license in our pocket, and we give that driving license. But we don't realize that driving license is also an international ID. So the risk of driving license data versus the risk of a voter ID card, there's a huge difference. But as a consumer, probably we will not be aware of all these risks. Our organization doing the right data classification and understanding the risk involving with what kind of data they are collecting and how they are processing. And now that's where more and more things come around technology, where one of the key risks is personal data. And we all talk about that data being exposed. One key thing is about leveraging artificial intelligence in security. However, as the famous quote is, there is no AI without IA. IA is information architecture. So if we don't have the data classification in place, we don't have the right policies in place, we can't put our artificial intelligence and it will fail. And so that's one. There is a large usage of AI which is happening. However, the baseline need to be corrected, not just at consumer level. While as a consumer, I may remain ignorant, but as an organization, the more and more regulation, and the real reason for regulation is so that these kind of guidelines are being placed for organization, how to classify the data and how to secure the data. The other thing that we are seeing more and more is supply chain attacks. And we have seen with the Ukraine war an NPM package where the person who was managing it, they've deleted the data from all Russian IPs where NPM package was installed. So now there's a more and more focus is happening on the moment the code is being written. So that means I have to be integrating my capability to detect any kind of a security vulnerability while the code is being written, right in the IDE when somebody's writing the code. So a lot of SaaS, SCA kind of capabilities are now being applied at software level. The other one which I want to talk about is the confidential computing. So everyone is investing more and more in confidential computing to avoid any kind of zero-day vulnerability and make sure the data, when we say the data resides within my perimeter, not really, because if you have an API, we don't know which device is connecting to your API. While there is an authentication and authorization, but we don't know which device it is. Confidential computing for critical workload where the data, all communication resides within the logical boundary with the network. So these are the couple of things where investments are happening.
Very informative. So I think now we know where some of the innovations few of important organizations are thinking through and the trends that we are seeing across the country, especially taking into account the macroeconomics and the topicality of the season. With that, if I may ask you, Vipin, since we are on the topic of technology and technology has taken a center seat in cyber, as many of panelists as well as many of you would have seen in the industry, technology is the way to start mitigating gaps. On that, Vipin, if I may ask you, Visa or any other payment company for that matter, they have almost every second data in transit. As any one of us in the room or many of our near and dear ones somewhere would be transacting for something. And in order to have that scale, it cannot be thought through without automation. And you, from your experience, have seen lots such dimension, as how automation can play a crucial role. So what 3 automation opportunities that you see for internet scale companies who deal with payments, what will be your reflection or any of the learnings that you would want to share with us today?
Thanks. So just to give context, and if we look at in the context of, and Saurabh spoke about it, none of the companies are today isolated from cyber fraud. And that's the reality of life. And if you look at how the payments landscape is also evolving, and you touched briefly on it, so now there are organized criminal gangs who are well resourced, who have military grade capability technologies and they launch attack on the technology assets of small to large enterprises, and the enterprises are interconnected. Plus, we also spoke as a group about the new generation of consumers and new set of consumers who are becoming part of the payments ecosystem. And last but not the least, there are regulations, some of them black and white, some of them maybe not so black and white. So these are 4 or 5 key challenges or the context in which any company today has to operate. The internet-facing companies are more vulnerable because they have more touch points. Some of the companies and some of the banks have millions of customers. So, in fact, how the customer behaves becomes he becomes the best risk manager or he becomes the worst risk manager for a bank. And with 24/7 connected systems, it's definitely a challenge on how you are able to respond in quick real time. So first need from a technology perspective, if I would put, all of us have to work near real time, be it Visa, be it any of the partners who are there, including Lalit and his teams, etc. That's first challenge I'll call out, and that's the first need. So technology definitely helps there. Second, as I mentioned earlier, all of us have pivoted from a static rule-based kind of a thing, or Shanky spoke about deploying junior engineers to put firewall rules, etc. Can we move away to a more dynamic risk-based authentication, not just for identifying who the customer is, but looking at various malicious activities that might be happening in the network? Last but not the least, it is very important that we recognize that the technologies will continue to emerge. It's, as I mentioned, no silver bullet available for any one of us, or we can rest on our laurels to continue providing the best-in-class kind of a solution. So we do deploy technologies like AI and ML. We have created capabilities where in a millisecond, when the transaction is being authorized and all our issuer partners take a call on either declining or approving the transaction, we provide the intelligence. So empowering the stakeholders is another key dimension of how we can leverage technology to automate some of our processes.
Certainly, I think the dynamic, rule-based automation, near real-time, one of the most pertinent things for many of us. And that is where one of the thoughts in my slide I was sharing, that world has started thinking how to have a preventive way rather than a reactive way. And automation is key. With that, if I deliberate together in this fraternity, and Shanky, if you can share your views, one of the things that most of us in the room would have deliberated, that at industry level, we certainly are thinking one or the other way to fend this off. But if we have to think largely at a country level, what is that one top recommendation that comes to mind, wherein many of our central capabilities, they are by far one of the most strongest in the world today, and therefore they keep us safe 24/7. But to up the game, take it to the next level, at country level, if there are certain dimensions that you have to propose, or if from your experience has to suggest, what deliberation would you want to put it in the room for all of us?
So, one deliberation I would definitely want everybody to consider is how to beef up our cyber crime detection and prosecution capabilities. Today, there is significant progress. I was in e-commerce many years ago, and reporting cybercrime used to be one person sitting for a week at a police station. It was quite difficult. There was no concept of cyber, so you had to report the crime where the delivery happened, which was kind of self-defeating. And from there we have progressed quite a bit. But, enforcement is actually, or prevention is only one part of the story. Enforcement reduces crime more than prevention. A better police force reduces criminals more than better locks. Because criminals will always figure a way around locks. They have a much harder time figuring a way out of jail. And that is something we have to strengthen. Of course, the IT Act will help. We're revising the IT Act, getting better laws on data protection, and skilling the police force themselves, not just a specialized cybercrime police force, but even the day-to-day police force. Because given that digital is everywhere in our lives today, even routine crime has a digital aspect nowadays. And therefore, the average policeman says, no, ye to cyber hai, cyber pe jao, can no longer work. Larger crime can of course go to a specialized cyber cell, but even the regular police force needs to scale up on like small social engineering frauds and be able to prosecute them, be able to follow up and detect and catch the criminals. That is one part. The second part, countrywide, we need better cyber insurance, protection, against mistakes made, against crimes that happen. Just like we have fire insurance, crime insurance, fraud insurance, theft insurance in the physical world. We need better cyber theft insurance. Today, the cyber theft insurance is a little bit basic. It's very hard to get it because it's very hard to prove that it was cyber. The conditions under which it applies is quite restrictive. We need a countrywide rethink on what cyber theft, how to quantify it, how to have insurance premiums on it, how to make sure that it is not being gamed so that the criminals don't benefit from insurance fraud as opposed to regular fraud. But we do need better cyber insurance.
Shanky, just adding to what you said on the law enforcement, so I completely agree with you. So if any one of you have ever been to a police station to report a fraud, it's an interesting experience. So you will spend 1.5 hours with a police inspector who will interrogate you. And in that interrogation, you will discover a lot of things which you yourself don't know about your industry, or you'll start doubting yourself. And then you move to a cyber cell where the experience is totally different. They are quite proactive, they take actions and steps. And if you look at the law enforcement agencies in other countries as well, I would rate, and while I agree with Shanky, there is a long way to go, but I'll rate our law enforcement agents far superior to some of the other nations that we see around us.
Yeah, in Europe, there's no concept of cyber cell. Reporting cyber fraud in Europe is a nightmare.
So this is very heartening, and I'm sure if few of the warriors are in the room who are keeping us protected, this is coming directly from the industry veterans, and I'm sure many of us have experienced that our capabilities at central country level is far more superior. But extending the same thought, and Rajiv, since you come from such an enriching experience running one of the most important entities in the country, how do you see few solutions that you may want to propose either to our fellow friends in the room across dimension of sectors? What few solutions that you feel that can keep our perimeter secured?
See, just now Shanky mentioned regarding reporting cyber crime, locks been okay, but then we need cyber insurances. And all of us agree that why cyber crime, but for any crime, if you have to register an FIR, it's a nightmare in the country. So we have to see that systems and processes which are there in the with us are stronger enough to take. So locks also have to be stronger. Earlier days we had our own small systems, LANs or WAN system, which it was within the own in-house control. And today we are everything public facing. We have talking that a lot of APIs flowing away from our systems, connecting to other systems and all that. We are partnering with a lot of fintechs where we exchange a lot of information. Now security at one place and the security at the other partner place, if it is not strong enough, can it be protecting ourselves? So a lot of education also has to go into this. Similarly, we have to ensure that laws of the land is also there. He's talked about IT Act. It is due for, certainly due for having a lot of refinement to go in. The Data Protection Act is yet to be a draft, guidelines are there, but then we should look into that Data Protection Act also coming in. We should also be partnering with many research and development activities which should be carried out in the field of cyber. Now, academics like institutions like IITs can be there who can partner with big institutions, even banks. We are partnering with IIT Kanpur, IIT Chennai, Madras, where we are trying to develop skill sets where it will help us to look into what the cyber crime is and how to protect ourselves. Similarly, education, both while you were showing there are risks from insiders as well as outsiders. So we have to address both the insiders and the outsiders. In the bank, we have a policy where from the board level to the bottom to the last person, we do a cyber training. And everyone with partnering with IDRBT, we do a lot of cyber training to that. Similarly, when it comes to the customer part, we do a lot of education to the customer through the branches. Now, government has put up an initiative called DBUs, Digital Banking Units. Now, each of these DBUs, 75 DBUs were inaugurated just recently by the Prime Minister. And each of these DBUs have a specific place where the customer education has to happen. Because all these DBUs are functioning, it's all digital, 24/7 available to the customer. But then, are they not prone to the frauds? Because there would be a customer who has the limited knowledge. So we are imparting this education to those things. So a lot of collaborative efforts have to be required, wherein we start following some standards. there is ISO 27001 certification. Then CSAT is one which is looking into a lot of cyber areas where they're reporting global. We all discussed that there should be a country level framework which has to be formed. So this will all help us to be more resilient. We are there, and we have the best in the brains there in the country. We don't have we don't have people. Hiring at a lower level or a higher level, that's we all have to know that there is a lot of iterations in the field. So we have to develop second line, third lines in the institutions. The teams internally understand your architecture much better than somebody coming from outside. So if you are able to train them and keep them together, I think we will be able to protect it. But again, we are moving towards a much advanced technologies where everyone has to be equipped to know that. So it's a continuous process where we will have to build education as well as the systems both in line together to make the system more resilient.
Certainly, and I think since we are talking about systems, I personally have these questions being deliberated with many of the companies and industry CEOs, and maybe Lalit, we would love to have your reflection. It's such a deep, daunting subject. It's never enough, but the whole data and the protection around data, the data in transit versus data at rest, the data within country versus data being encrypted and flowing between wires, though encrypted but coming back to country, the whole protection or the information security around data. How do you see the solution to be emerging in this space? Let's say if you forecast 3 to 5 years from now, and we as a country have to be very resilient about the protection of data, what few reflections that you can share with all of us that you personally think about or from your experience you would have learned?
So this is a very critical question. On the data side, I probably don't have all the answers on this. But from the data side, the very first thing starts with what data I'm storing. Awareness of any organization and awareness of an individual, what data we are sharing. I give an example of driving license versus voter ID card. They have different criticalities. So first of all, do I need that data to be collected, or am I just asking for all the data and just collecting it? That's one. So that means in the system, I need to classify all my data first. Second thing is where I'm storing the data. Am I applying right encryption there? And who controls the keys to those encryption? How I'm rotating those keys, then deeper level question comes in. But then when I'm writing application, even before storing the data, if I'm writing an application, and as you see the evolution of web services to now API driven application, do I even need an API for get data? That means, do I even need to allow somebody to fetch those attributes? Probably no. So I need to think about how my application behave with the data. Then of course we apply encryption at every layer, be it REST or in transit. Yesterday there's OpenSSL vulnerability has been disclosed, and there's a patch. So of course there's a patching around those, which is a very important practice. But then the question is, while I apply, have TLS encryption, do I have visibility on my APIs? Do I have observability? What data is flowing? And do I have controls if I start seeing there's a lot more read of a particular data type from a particular user which has not been before? Do I have controls in place to stop those kind of attacks? And there will be interesting attacks which we will see in the industry. It's not always somebody go and steal the data. They might configure some other resource, they might take a backup, and then that backup is being attached somewhere else so that you don't have a trace around it. So all kind of interesting cases are there. But the moment I have a classification, I have a control over who have access to this data, what data they can read, and if they're reading more than what they're supposed to read. So I think this visibility is way more critical apart from just encryption. Thank you.
Very, very craftfully stated, and I was so engrossed in putting this structure, and for our friends in the room, Lalit very beautifully described classify, store, understand behavior of data, controls in place, and then do whatever we need to do. So I think the roots and basics very beautifully drafted. Changing gears, and many of us in the room, we have seen the complexity of running a bank, running a payment industry, running an insurance company. It is never just internet. It is branches, sales, it is the third-party ecosystems, it's the whole agency systems. So therefore, there's lots of play between as how our country and many other countries are seeing a play of robots, IoTs, machines, and we talked briefly about it when I was talking about as how few of the payment aggregators, when we pay, they say payment done. So if I reflect back on this domain, which is more like a fungibility of IoT and software and therefore the resilience topic, then Vipin, if I may ask you, how do you see certain solutions emerging and evolving in this space? Any dimension of thought that you want to preempt with and say that I think there are X things that we as a team should take care of as this is an emerging trend?
Thank you. That's a great question. In fact, so if it's very difficult to crystal gaze. So like the IoTs, robots, and the AI and the 5Gs, so they are no longer technologies of tomorrow. We are already seeing them manifest, and where else to manifest but in the banking industry itself. So that's the first thing I would like to share. And I am very excited about the emergence of new technologies because they provide an opportunity for the entire ecosystem to grow the digital transactions. So that's the good part of it. They also provide an opportunity, for example, 5G, if you look at, so they provide an opportunity to digitize, to leapfrog communities in areas where there is no wired infrastructure available. Having said that, as somebody who works in a risk profession, I am also wary of the fact that it also opens up a flood of possibilities around the millions and billions of devices which are today connected on the internet. They become a potential conduit of cyber attack. So there is a flip side to it, there is a flop side to it. But if I were to look at what we can do, because technology will keep on evolving, but it's our collective ability to harness the data it generates. So Shanky spoke about we living in a world of walled gardens today. So if we break that, because from a cyber and a risk community perspective, there is also that element of shame. What if the other person found out my house was compromised? So if we move beyond that, and if I were to look at a world of tomorrow, the biggest opportunity for us as an industry is to collectively harness our capabilities, collectively harness the data that we generate. Just imagine a scenario where all the banks are able to harness those data capabilities. All the law enforcement agencies are able to harness those data capabilities. That will be a much bigger response to the cyber fraudsters who are attacking the individual infrastructures of the banks.
This is so pertinent. And I think one last question, and Shanky, to you, because I know that you have been a proponent of innovation, incubation for many years now. As a country, if we have to look at it, and all of us in the room, if we have to take the innovation index of cyber solution up, like few other countries have been doing, what is that one reflection that you want to leave in the room for all of us that we should do so that either we start innovating in this space rather than catching up, or we start being a producer of solution to the many other countries rather than just thinking within?
So, here my model is Israel. Israel has produced more cyber security innovation than America or India. India is actually not very far behind. India is pretty decent at cyber security innovation. But, compared to Israel, we are quite far behind. And Israel, basically, of course, they have mandatory military service, and many of these guys come out of that military service. But I've realized what they benefit from is not the military service, but an ecosystem of purchasers and testers who allow those products to develop. We unfortunately, in India, we don't yet have that rich ecosystem. It is developing. Fintech, we do indeed have an ecosystem where somebody comes up with a fintech idea, there will be space for it to develop. In the cyber world, I think that is still a little bit fresh. We are still, as banks in particular, very worried about taking new cyber security solutions. We tend to put them through too many hoops. And that is because we ourselves are questioned a lot on any new solution. How do you know it is good? How do you know it is? And so on and so forth. And there I think a little bit of collective endeavor is probably required to say that at least in some boxes, we will encourage new ideas to develop to the point where they become, more stable and industry standard. And I think that's the one learning that I had with Israel. In Israel, you launch a cybersecurity company, you will find a customer. Whereas in India, you launch a cybersecurity company, you will find a customer, but you will be faced with a lot more skepticism. And again, we are ignoring how much cybersecurity innovation happens in India. There is a lot that happens, but they find customers outside.
Very, very pertinent. So, this brings us to the session time, but let me just share with you a quick recap. This was so informative, and you would be noticing I was taking some notes. Let me reflect it together. A few very critical keywords that have come up and emerged in the room. One is social engineering. Second is open cyber security format. The third is cyber is not niche, but complex. Fourth is the way community has to emerge, which is leaders, frontline warriors, man versus machine. So I think this is an optimal balance. Fifth is academia inclusion for research. I think that was a very powerful statement for a country like us to have, who enjoy such high technical and innovation index today, unlike what it was 10 years back. No AI without IA. So no artificial intelligence without information architecture. That's very powerful. The whole supply chain area which is emerging, the whole data engineering area which is emerging, near real-time dynamic risk-based rule. So which means no single bullet for everyone. Now everyone will have to see it differently. Cyber crime detection and reporting at a country level. If this happens, it will be magical. Beautifully crafted how to protect data, classify, store, learn behaviors, put controls. And the 10th one, our ecosystem of purchasers and testers to bring the innovation for cyber solutioning, not for us, but for the world. With that, thank you so much, gentlemen. This was so informative, and thank you so much for being so candid and attentive. Do we have a room for a question? Or maybe we'll take one and rest, then we will have it over coffee. We'll take one. Who do you want to ask this to?
Sir, to the forum. Sir, I would like to understand the risk factors from the cyber threat, cyber crime point of view, as far as the blockchain is concerned.
Can I take this?
Yes, please.
So, the promise of blockchain or Web3 is that today the data custodian is organization. All the big tech organizations which are running, they are storing the data. Then the data custodian becomes you as an entity. So that's a whole promise, that the data which is being shared right now and being monetized in the market, the data custodian will change. So now there's a lot of potential there, and I continuously involved with these communities. Right now, the focus in blockchain is more and more towards their own wallet security right now. So there's a hardware wallet, there's a software wallet, which are there. My assessment when I say is limited to my knowledge. So I'm not claiming anything on that. It's still at a very nascent stage. We still need to understand a lot of nuances around it. So there's no definite answer I have also even got on this, but that's a promise that we have. When the question you asked about the data, I want to bring that up, but I thought probably it's not that mature right now. But India is now, and India is the innovation bed for this, by the way. There's a huge community of Web3 that operates. I don't have a perfect answer for this, but that's the promise that we are seeing with underlying technology, which is blockchain in Web3.
Sir, if that is the case, under what confidence we will proceed ahead with this? Actually, and when it is clubbed with cloud solutions also, the risk increases, in fact. Am I right or wrong?
I think we need to interpret the risk accordingly. When we say the risk increases with any solution, we also need to consider how we are utilizing the default controls. For example, largely the 80% of the risk that, as you mentioned, is in the cloud is probably coming from misconfigurations. So it's always secure default over individual configuration that need to be operated at.
See, I have a bit to add here. You know, blockchain is a technology. Per se, it is neither risky nor non-risky. It depends on how you use it. Of course, blockchain is fully encrypted and this and that, but if you lose the key or somebody steals the key from you, then he will get access to your data and your money. And then also, you know, blockchain is like notes, like rupee notes. You know, if there is counterfeiting, then blockchain prevents counterfeiting, but it doesn't prevent banks being robbed. So there is a whole, blockchain per se or cloud per se is not secure or insecure. The usage of it exposes different things to different security risks. So when you're using it, you'll have to think through that particular use case's risks.
So
it depends on what the risk is. You know, robbery of bank has a different solution from counterfeiting. Yeah. Both are risks in money. You know, or you can carry gold, which is not counterfeitable, but obviously gold has its own different kind of risks.
So I think, you know, this is very encouraging conversation, and maybe we will not be in between of the lunch and audience, and I would request if you guys can, you know, deliberate together. But this was such a fantastic deliberation by all of you. Thank you so much for being so thoughtful, and nonetheless, thank you so much for being a very nice, attentive leaders and audience in the room. Hope we all got those 10 principles that I just talked about that we could get out of this deliberation together. Have a great day ahead. We have many more thought-provoking sessions, and I'll hand it over to my friend to take it forward.